Hello and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight for this late night stream to talk about, as usual, the notes from occupied nation. Talking about asylum centres and plantation population replacement in Ireland and everything that stems from that, the goings on. So tonight I'm talking about Dundrum, County Tipperary, largely, and also about Thornton Hall in Dublin, and a few other things. A few other stories from Ireland. So if anybody in the chat there wants to give me a sound check, I would appreciate it. As usual, feel free to share this on your social media. You can click the link in the description on YouTube and in my bio if you're watching on X. You can support the channel. You can follow me on the other social media, Telegram, Rumble, YouTube, etc. So thanks for joining me. I had to take a delayed start there. One of my kids woke up screaming. I think is growing some back teeth, which kind of woke the other one up, and I was required to help out. So always happy to do it. You got to prioritize these things, but yeah, I had my finger on the button ready to go live as well. It was funny, and then I spent like 5 minutes kind of rocking a baby in a very dark room, and then came back in here with a light pointed at me. So I feel like a deer in the headlight again. So I'm trying to adjust back to this room and this environment from being in a dark room with a baby, all relaxed and chilled out. So anyway, yeah, I've wanted for a couple of days to talk about particularly Dundrum in County Tipperary. There's been a lot. There's been a protest ongoing there against it's complicated because a repurposing of a old manor hotel there. Beautiful grounds, beautiful area. It was used for Ukrainian asylum seekers. There's a story behind how it was repurposed, but it was meant to be temporary for Ukrainian asylum seekers, but of course it got made sort of permanent, and the Ukrainians are currently being switched out for, random IPAs, they call them, international protection applicants, all this jargon. But it is, you can imagine Middle Eastern, African sort of young men, ages between like 18 and 35, that type of thing. G-Star, the rest of it. Yeah, Ficky, all that. So they're being moved in. So locals have been protesting against it for weeks now. Against it, but there's a whole conversation to be had about Dundrum being the archetypal model for, in a way, what not to do, because this story is just ongoing. In Ireland, it keeps happening, and there's no good answer. There's no like force, protest by force, towns coming out with blockades and with throwing missiles at Gardaí and having pitched battles with Gardaí. Of course, I condemn all illegal activity, etc. But that kind of way. There's the kinetic approach, sort of street hostilities, and then there's the court battles, and then there's this and that, fire cert complaints and all that. Which way to go? There's no guaranteed way. There's no thing if you do it this way, because of course people of Newtown Mount Kennedy protested, we'll say, kinetically, where they refused to budge. They were sort of attacked by police, but there was sort of clashes, we'll say, however you want to define it. And of course they just got beaten out of the way. That'll happen. So you could say what worked in Coolock didn't work in Newtown Mount Kennedy. And then there are cases where Uachtarard put up blockades, and who knows what it went on behind the scenes. It worked there, where the person who was behind it, the Gombeen, who was opening up this plantation center, effectively backed out. So who knows what went on there? Complaints, interpersonal stuff, I don't know. But they took the peaceful approach. Oh, we don't want, we're not racist, we're not this, that, and it worked. We're not racist, we just think we don't have the facilities. And then some behind the scenes stuff, and somehow the whole thing got pulled. That's very rare. That happened for Uachtarard. But then similarly, you could say, well, Coolock, all the lads started throwing stuff at the guards. There were 5 arson attacks on the alleged arson attacks, I don't know, on the site itself. And as of now, nobody's been moved in there. It's all kind of shut down. something similar in Finglas, I think it was Finglas, I'm not sure. So basically, there's no exact science to this. I don't have magic answers. I don't know, but I do know that of all the things that don't work, what Dundrum did works the least. It's guaranteed failure, and it's just sad to see they sort of. It's tough to speak about this because they tried to take the high road, the court injunctions and not engaging with nationalist activists or nationalism in general, because they're too good for that type of thing, or they don't want to be smeared or labeled as this or that or the other. They don't want to mix with the riffraff, and they want to go by the official channels, and that, of course, has not worked out very nicely for them. And we'll just go through it. So I'll just play you a video here from Mick O'Keefe posted this, many others, just this video that came out from Shane James, he's been active in Clonmel and elsewhere, but so this is from a couple of days ago now. The usual, there's a sort of camp where people are protesting or blockading the centre, and then the guards move in, riot, cops, the rest of it, and push people out of the way and just force the buses of these migrant men in to be allowed in and for works to continue and the rest of it.
Hey, whoa.
Keep it easy now. You're stepping something now.
Philip. This is fucking ridiculous. This is ridiculous. So there's such a thing as not following orders, lads. There is, like, there's such Ireland's finest. Well, at least you wear the numbers anyway, unlike the other boys. I'll give you that.
But you get the idea. And then they start to sort of a rubble blockade had been left, which, is what it is. And so they get someone in to move that.
1 or 2. Out Irish Guard. Staying alive!
So yeah, you get the idea. You've seen that a million times, I suppose. I don't want to be too repetitive, even though the same stuff just keeps happening. That was Dundrum. Now, I need to read you some stuff. So this guy here on Twitter, or on X, at Peter Paul guy, he phrased it pretty well. So there was a few things came out from Dundrum, multiple stories where they wanted to disassociate themselves from what you would call nationalism, what some kind of called far right, racist, activist, whatever it is, right? They wanted to disassociate themselves from people who are generally against mass immigration, let's say, right? As not just in their own town, but just for the whole country as a general philosophy, let's say, right? They want to disassociate themselves from that because apparently that's untouchable or somehow dangerous or whatever it is, apparently, right? So bad association. And they there was this sort of infamous headline that an Irish Examiner journalist managed to sort of extract from some possibly hapless quotee or someone who spoke to them. Because of course I don't I feel like our local shouldn't have said that. That's very inappropriate. But of course a journalist might have a way of kind of winding that out of somebody, strategically. You wouldn't be associated with Kulak, would you? And everything, the illegal stuff that went on there, and kind of lead the person into saying X, Y, and Z, and then catch the quote and demoralize and create division and issues and stuff. So while I understand that, there are multiple examples of people in Dundrum speaking like this, multiple quotes, and it's very clear that this was the theme there. It's not just a quote out of context. So Dundrum residents opposing asylum centre plans don't want violence like in Kulak. And this guy on X here, his comments says, the residents of Dundrum capitulated to Irish media, politicians and NGOs by saying they don't want to be associated with the protests in Kulak. Dundrum's population has doubled overnight. The lesson for other protests is politicians, media and NGOs are not your friend. Now, again, someone could say, well, there are communities that have been unafraid to make associations with nationalists and with wider politics. and they have even thrown stuff and had argy-bargy with the guards and all that, and they've still had the plantation centre put in. Again, there's no real golden silver bullet, whatever. Let's not bring bullets into the situation. These are hypothetical metaphors, obviously, right? But yeah, they're metaphors, clearly stated, right? But or figures of speech. There's no silver bullet, but it's like this stuff is clearly bad. This isolate yourself. I've been over this a million times. I want to just kind of get through it a bit faster, but I want to read the article itself that this was based on. Oh no, where is it, lads? There we go. So, because the whole article is actually littered with interesting tidbits, especially for me to react to, right? Which is why I'm reading it. This is from the 3rd of August. So what's that? Like just about 2 weeks ago. So not long ago. Now, bear in mind that a couple of days ago, the guards came in, pushed everyone aside effectively, and just escorted these busloads of men to the steel barricades will be put up. It'll be turned into a fortress. It pretty much is already. And that's that forever. So this town of whatever it is, 250 people, has its population doubled with foreigners. And basically, the people of that town and that whole community effectively become a side barnacle to a sort of a fortified military barracks for foreign men in perpetuity. And of course, not just whatever it is, 500 men or whatever. Let's say it's 500 on paper for now. It's 500 now, but of course, a new estate, because these people are now rendered powerless. The town is powerless. So basically, once you've been defeated, you can only be defeated more. Do you get? That's the importance of this too, is that if you've been rolled over and sort of rolled into a ball and disposed of on an issue as grave as this, then in future it's just open season, right? And they can do what they want. So it could be 500 men in there, or largely unvetted, illegal men and all that. And then crucially, of course, they could roll in with another bunch of JCBs and the Gardaí if anyone protests. They could have no planning. They can do whatever they want, right? They've no law, no need for consent, none of that. That's out the window now. So now you are totally subjugated, and it's only the beginning. And so they could roll in with other tanks effectively, right? And buy up a couple of fields off some farmers and put down just acres of new build estates, and then move the guys from the plantation barracks sort of transfer facility into the estate, and then build more and more and more, and all the rest of it. And I mean, you couldn't stop this. I don't blame anyone, by the way. I don't have the magic solutions, but I'm just saying as a matter of fact, you couldn't stop this. So why could you stop anything in future? You are a town of if I'm not getting the numbers quite exactly right here, it's more or less this, right? If you're a town of 250 people and you're able to bring in 500 or 250 men or whatever it is, like a huge number, the funny thing about it, it's not funny, is that if it's largely men coming in and you started out with 250 people, you didn't start out with 250 28-year-old hurlers, good stock Irish lads, right? You started out with 250 people who skew largely over the age of 50, probably, right? Old, infirm, past it, in that sense, right? And how many, maybe some people have kids and all that, but if you were to break it down of those 250, how many are, if you want to call the migrants, very often they're largely fighting age, military age men and all that, right? So just for argument's sake, how many military age Irish men are within that 150? I mean, off the top of my head, it's probably like 30 or something like that. I don't know. How many could it really be, right? Probably maybe less. Very little. So you have like 30. This is hypothetical, right? I don't have the exact demographics of Dundrum. Nobody probably does. But let's say 30 military age Irish men locally. Men that if a criminal ran out, or a bunch of strange men with bats came into town, 5-6 drunk men or something like that, and the Gardaí weren't immediately around, and you had to say, okay, get some lads out to protect the houses here and whatever. That in a hypothetical situation like that, you might have 30 men of that description. You're not going to send an old lady out. 30 men like that in Dundrum. But of course, now if you're importing 250, probably at least 180 of those people are young, single, fighting age, military age men. So now it's 180 versus 30. Do you get me? And of course, the guards, you say, well, I'll just call the guards. Well, look, the guards will come out in riot gear en masse at a moment's notice when you're protesting this stuff. But I don't think down the line, if you were having issues, they'd be so quick, right? Let's be real. I think they would revert back to being shadows. Hard to find. They shrug when something's happened, your window's been broken, something's happened to you, they shrug and say, well, what am I meant to do? They go back to being inert right when you need them. So that's the scenario. But here, so that's what happened. That's now gone down. That's the story now, locked in Dundrum. And I mean, look at just 2 weeks ago, the attitude that they had. The attitude, sort of holier than thou attitude. I'll begin to read. So protesters who brought a High Court legal challenge to try and stop an asylum centre from expanding in County Tipperary have warned similar groups from around the country to stay away, saying that there will be no violence like in Coolock. So stay away, nationalists stay away, people to help, people who might want to help Dundrum or support them to stay away. So imagine saying that. I don't know. Let's give an example. You have a bird watching, crap, but like a nature preservation group or something, and there's a bunch of people from, and you're fighting against a local company who want to build over this natural area, something like that. And then you just have a bunch of people who from around the country, around the world, who say, we support nature preservation, the type you're talking about. We're big supporters of that, actually. Random people organically from all over the country and the world who support your cause. They want to come and speak to you, attend your demonstration, say hello, and post about it on social media, associate with you in some fashion or other, and just lend their support. And for some reason, you turn around and say, of all the people I could say we don't want support from, it's the people who are in support of our cause. I don't want. So they didn't go out of their way saying they didn't make an exhaustive list of people they don't want support from, right? Also, cricket players, upholstery people, climate change activists, road safety awareness activists. They didn't go through an exhaustive list. They said, no, it's just people who are against mass immigration being steamrolled into towns all over the country. Those are the only people we're going to go out of our way to say we don't want support from. Now, how does that make any sense, right? Also, someone could say, well, we don't want free man of the land. We don't want the maritime law. We don't want people coming along like it's some sort of carnival with all sorts of, maybe people with poorly adjusted people and crackpots and all sorts of stuff. Maybe even sort of agent provocateurs. We don't want it to be an open season carnival for anybody, because that just disrupts the legitimacy of our movement. I understand that. But of course, there's a difference. I'll just use myself as the example, right? I'm the nationalist I oppose this in general, not just if it's in my town or this or that town. And I don't make fake the reasons why I'm against it. I'm honest about it. And I'm part of an overall political movement against it in the country, as opposed to just one dickhead here or there on my own saying it's about water services or something like that. I'm not full of shite, is what I'm saying. I'm just out there, real about it, and I'm a long-time activist on it, and I state my views clearly, and I understand the whole thing. What it is. Say I want, and I'm also reasonably well adjusted. I'm not a crackpot. I'm not a lunatic, etc. If I went down there and said, their whole thing about people stay away. We've told people they're not welcome here and all this, right? People, specific people. If I went down there and they played that whole game, the word went around, they said, get him out of here. That's not a crackpot setting up stalls, shouting through a megaphone, trying to make it about their own issue or something. I'm talking about, and I've seen this, I'm talking about, I just go along, and I've not been to Dundrum, but me or someone like me goes along and shows up and says, I'm not shouting from a megaphone. I'm not making it my issue. I'm not staying here permanently. I'm not trying to ascribe anything of my view to your view to my view. I'm just coming along to say hello, say, how are you getting on? Ask some questions, just, learn about the thing. A free society, an open, reasonable society. I'm in, it's public property. It's not I'm not walking into someone's back, into someone's kitchen around the back garden. Or this is a public area. In fact, it's a public demonstration. Clearly, you're demonstrating in public. You're not demonstrating in your bedroom. You're demonstrating in public in order to be in the public, to engage with the public, to be visible, and also to blockade the center, whatever it is they're doing. But clearly, it's a public-facing protest, and they are trying to draw attention to their plight, we'll say. So the idea that some random person could come along, it could be a random person who doesn't know what's going on and stops and says, hey, I see you're doing something here. I'm going to stop for an hour and mill around and just talk. That's fair, surely. So if I came along like that and I said, yeah, I'm here like that, and I have my view here. I'm Garrod Murphy. You can see my Twitter if you want to and all that. But I'm not here trying to push anything on you. I'm just talking. I might do a live stream off in the corner or do my own thing. If you don't want to talk directly on Twitter, that's fine. But I'm going to say what I want. But of course, I've seen in towns like this that get the jitters put on them, and there's a reason why that happens. Is that you'd almost have someone following you saying, who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing? We don't want you saying that here, or whatever, which is straight away a weird attitude. It's like, wait, it's because the TLDR is, wait, who's gotten to you, right? This is not normal. I'm not setting up a stall here. I'm doing my own thing, and you do your thing. And I agree with everybody here, basically. There's no problem with me and you until someone said there was, right? Someone in this group, someone controlling this thing said there was. Someone who thinks they have a grand plan or whatever, or they want to gain political capital out of it unchallenged and the rest of it. There's shenanigans going on here. It's not normal for someone to show up, and like a normal person to show up who agrees with the protest, who agrees with the demo and says, I'm not asking any of you to sign up to my project here. I'm just going to do a live stream. And actually what will happen is a couple of thousand, it could be a couple of million if it goes the right way, it gets viral or something. But there are tons of people around Ireland, tons of people around the world who totally support your movement. And I know how to frame it. I have a long track record with it. I know what I'm doing, right? I'm regarded as knowing what I'm doing with this stuff. I've been around the block and I've no dog in the fight. I'm not a local wheeler dealer. I'm not trying to doing the rounds as a local politician, rubbing the hands together, trying to kind of get political capital out of it, which is the game of a sort of standard politician. I don't want to deal with the local meat factories. There's none of that, right? And again, I don't want anything from the people here, and I'm not trying to wrap anything around you. When you arrive with a fairly reasonable thing like that, and there's this thing, we don't want people like you here or anybody here like you, that's weird. That's not normal. Like I say, compare it to the nature preservation thing. It's a nature preservation protest in Cork. And someone from Loud says, hey, I heard about it, actually. I was in the area and I said I'd come down and, take a few pictures and say hello and all that. And I'm in favor. I support nature preservation all over the country consistently. So I really support what you're doing. I just want to talk to you. If the people clammed up and freaked out, there'd be something weird going on. You'd be thinking, why would they embrace that person with open arms? Surely, right? If everything was what it seemed. Anyway, I'm belaboring the point. So they said, so they stay away, right? Stay away. Anyone who supports us, stay away. Nothing fishy there at all. This week, application for an emergency injunction. Dundrum House asylum seeker Judge David Holland. The case was brought on behalf of 230 residents who submitted affidavits complaining. I'll try to skip through here. Ukrainian asylum seekers first moved into the hotel shortly after the war broke out, but many have left since, and there are around 70 asylum seekers of all nationalities living there currently. The plan is to move in around 270 IPAS. Now, you should see this place. It is absolutely beautiful. This old house. It's surreal. I'm trying to catch up with your chats here. So anyway, this week the Irish Examiner met the protesters who have set up a round-the-clock camp and have been demonstrating at the front of the hotel for the past 9 weeks. They said they do not want to be branded as racists and want outside groups to stay away. Okay, so they don't want to be branded as racist. Now, sorry, I put a random chat on the screen there. Didn't mean to, but also thank you for engaging. So yeah, so we don't want to be branded as racist. Now, of course, here's one thing, like, who's doing the branding? So you would think they would say, we don't want anyone here who might brand anyone as a racist, because that's a terrible thing. I mean, why would you be doing that? That's basically blacklisting, saying you can't have a job or something like that. It's putting a target on you socially, in the social credit score kind of system type of way. The worst people in the world are those who brand people racist flippantly, but they go, no, we're we don't be branded as racist. You know, it's a bitch move is basically what I'm saying. And I thought we were beyond that about 4 years ago. And they want outside groups to stay away. Now, bear in mind, they sat down. So you can see underneath here, if you can't enlarge it. Computer slow. Computer says slow. There we go. So you can see the picture here, right? So the locals, they're all very, let's say, good people, good upstanding people. They're not like terrible like me, or like you watching, or terrible people who think a million immigrants being brought into Ireland is bad just in general, and they're not afraid to say it. They're not riffraff like you, right? These are normal people. These are good, normal, solid people who don't want to be branded, right? Unlike you, who's just telling the truth and just saying it like it is for real, to no benefit to yourself. Scumbags like you, scumbags like me. But it's funny because they don't want outside groups, right? But at the same time, they'll line up for an Irish Examiner photo op, an interview. So what, was the Irish Examiner author or journalist from town, or was he an outside group? I'm sure he was probably an outside group. So was RTE. Now, my point would be, how are the outside groups? They would say, well, they're outside groups, but they're legitimate. They're legitimate. They're part of the system, right? They're good. They're part of the system. They are respectable, right? Now, my point would be, well, how are the respectable outside institutions going for you, right? The guards are respectable. Well, I'm pretty sure they just pushed you out of the way and, facilitated the complete destruction of the future posterity of your town, and your social capital, the future of the GA clubs, all the stuff you have set up. There's the part of an interview with a woman from Dublin who moved there 20 years ago, people who joined in smatterings over time, and maybe people from Dundrum who moved away and then came back because they pined for the home they grew up in, and they want to raise their kids there too, the beauty of it. And they had all their dreams and hopes for this, because it's not just about four walls of a house or a few roads. It's about the network, the social capital, the trust and reciprocity within your area. That's where you want to raise your kids, where you feel that they're safe, things are familiar, you know everybody, you know everything about it, and they know you, and so you're connected. It's like a large family or community in the truest sense, right? That's all being ripped out from under you. And the guards were there with their caps and their dead eyes, and the local guard was there to Plimosi and say, I understand. He's grand. He's getting paid, right? He's getting sorted out. He knows what his job is, right? He's official. He's respectable. They're respectable. Well, how were they for you? The Examiner, who sort of tied you up in knots, really, because they know what they're doing and you don't. Let's be real. And the Irish Examiner have been pushing for plantations to happen in towns and villages all over this country 4 years professionally, right? Well, they're respectable. How is that going for you? The government are respectable. Simon Harris is respectable. Helen McAtee, Roderick O'Gorman, they're respectable. They're not like me. I'm riffraff, right? You wouldn't want to be associated with me. I'll stay away. But what about Simon Harris? What about, let's go for another one. What about, where are they? It was the Tipperary Welcomes Group, right? Tipperary PPN and Tipperary this and that, all funded by the state. PPN, Public Participation Network, and the rest of it, right? So this list of people. Tipperary Welcomes. Tipperary Welcomes is a network of community groups and civic organizations standing together to reject hate and division and fight for what we all need to flourish. Tipperary prides itself on being welcoming, blah, 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 right? So what they're saying is that a small, loud minority of haters with nothing to offer us and no vision for Tipperary's future want to distract us by scapegoating, blah, 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 right? So they basically talk shite where they're trying to say that, oh, we just need a better government. But there's nothing wrong with bringing 250 Middle Eastern men into Dundrum. There's nothing wrong with bringing another 1 million people into Ireland over the next 2 or 3 years or 4 years, 5 years, whatever, with a housing crisis is not even describing it. There's nothing wrong with that. Fundamentally, there's no limit to how many migrants you could bring in nationally and locally. No limit. In fact, it's brilliant. And if you say otherwise, you're a racist scumbag. That's what we're putting forth. You're allowed to be annoyed about services and provisions, but if you fundamentally have an issue with the fact that they bring in these developers and landlords and multinationals and all this are conspiring to kind of bring hundreds of thousands of people in to enrich the big boys, the rich boys, right? If you're against that project in general, locally or nationally, you're evil, effectively, is what they're saying, and we're here against you. And it's signed by, so they would surely count people who were protesting, the locals in Dundrum protesting all these people being moved into the hotel, former hotel. So the A-Team Youth Club, Clon together, John O'Leary Celtic Supporters Club, Rosscray Community Hub. I spoke about that at a different time. Unreal stuff. Tipperary PPN, again, Public Participation Network, state-funded institution. They have an office. At least they did in Clare when I was at that one. They have an office. They have a phone. They have photo ops, coffee mornings, the whole lot, right? So they're very respectful, very normal. I've no coffee mornings, right? So stay away from me. Tipperary PPN are your man. Just like the Irish Examiner, Roderick O'Gorman, the Gardaí. Do you know what, actually? The local Gombeen, whatever shell company Gombeen, layers of shell companies, or who knows what sort of vicious exploitation, guy driving around in a brand new 242 Land Rover wouldn't spit on any of us, right? And he's just making a fortune off all this. What do they call them? Tenderpreneur, right? A great entrepreneur, a great dynamic businessman, the invisible hand of capitalism, the genius of ferrying a load of government-sponsored migrants into a facility. You buy it up, you ship them in, you make millions, happy days. He, who cares not for the greater good of Dundrum or Ireland, he's a decent man. You'll see him inside in the Shelburne having a drink with the lads, right? With Finton and John and whatever, right? He's happy, or he's one of the lads. He's down at the horse, whatever they're called, right? The horse world. I really don't know. Equine stuff. Really one of the lads, right? Really one of the lads. Great for a bunch of a round of pints for everyone in the pub. He's a great man. And he's respectable. He's grand. So if that's what you want, I'm just making my point. If that's what you want, by all means, you don't want any violence like in Coolock, so-called, even though they were attacked by guards. You don't want any outside groups, right? Now, they never said, we don't want any PPN coming anywhere near here. We don't want any Rosscray Welcomes group coming here, because we know that's, they're basically against us. We don't want profiteers from this stuff here. They only singled out the people who support them. So anyway, they were told to stay away, and of course the Examiner, perfectly welcome, line up for a photograph, right? And they're grand. But fires and violence do not help matters, said one local, Fiona Kennedy. We obviously feel for other communities, but we're keeping this local, and there will be no violence. Okay. We are such a contrast to Coolock. We're so much better. Shane Lee said this up in Rosscray as well. In Tipperary. Shane Lee said the same in a clip. He said, we're not like the rest of the country turning people away. Now, I was there. Everyone there was just like, we don't want a bunch of foreign men being dumped in here. We've had too much of it already. We don't recognize the town. We're not safe. Everybody in reality knows that in town. So does Shane Lee. So does everybody. But he's up trying to stir this kind of fake moralizing. he gets up and says, we're not like, we're a welcoming community here. We're the people of Roscrea, right? We're very good. We all do our darkness into light run, right? So it's the same type who, if you don't have a car that's less than 3 years new, or whatever, or if you don't have a new car, and if you don't have a big massive kitchen island, or your hair done a certain way, or whatever it is, right? If you don't have all this stuff, they wouldn't look at you. But then the next day they're at the darkness into light run and they're taking a big picture. It's that sort of moralizing, no morals when it comes down to it, but all about the show, all about being seen to be holier than thou. That's the attitude. So it's we'll deal with it here. We don't want to be bad like Kulak. And Shane Lee said the same thing. He said, we're not like the rest of the country turning people away. We're very good here. Meanwhile, they're getting battered by the guards. The whole country, people from Kulak to wherever, to around the world, are supporting them on the fundamental thing. And they're turning around and throwing their two fingers back. Not they, people in Roscrea, but the people leading this stuff, the likes of Shane Lee, throwing the finger back at everyone else, saying, we're better than everyone else. Again, it's the kind of trying to climb away from all the rest of it. I have a clip that sums it up perfectly well, but it's the same thing here as this person says in Dundrum. And of course, see how it worked out for them. Now, we don't want violence. We're going to deal with this as locals. This is a local issue, but also it's a national crisis. Okay, fair enough. It is a national crisis. Fair play for saying that. She says the government can't get on top of it. Again, that's the problem. That's why maybe you could have done with exposing yourself to alternative points of view and communication networks and stuff, because, again, it's not that the government can't get on top of it. The government are perfectly on top of it. They're doing an exquisite job. They know exactly what they're doing. It's being done. It's like, we're talking Rachmaninoff sort of like Vivaldi levels of like exquisite perfection, the way they're orchestrating and rolling this thing out, right? They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to narrative control. They know how to bully people out of the way. They have perfected their physical force game with the guards and the high silver fences or the concrete fences. And they have it down to a T. And it's humming away as good as ever. They know exactly what they're doing. Their job, it's not some situation that spiraled out of hand and they don't know how to deal with it. They mean to do what they're doing. You need to understand that. She says, it's the frustration of it. We are told we must double your population with complete strangers and we have no say. The only way now is to fight the Department of fight the Department of Integration is to do it in their own boardrooms legally. Again, how did that work out for you? How did that work out? We'll find out. In contrast to the scenes at the former Crown Paints warehouse in Coolock in North Dublin recently, with 5 arson attacks in 1 week, Gardaí being attacked with missiles and multiple arrests, the protesters in Dundrum are sitting in chairs in the shade from the sun drinking tea. Dundrum House Hotel has long established itself as a well-known luxury, blah, blah, blah. It's actually just like I said. Oh my God, I hadn't noticed this bit, but on Thursday, there was a steady stream of members dressed in pink for a charity day in aid of the National Breast Cancer Research Institution. Now, it sounds contradictory for me to say this, like I'm condemning them for supporting breast cancer research. I'm not, obviously, right? That's great in itself. But there is a mentality. You see it a lot where someone would, were it to be COVID or were it to be some sort of social taboo where the government or the boss man or some big powerful sort of hegemony or influence within an area or a social group has decided that you're to be condemned. You're a leper now, you're written off. The same people who would not question that would just stab you in the guts, right? And just say, you're bad. I was told you're bad and it's for my own gain to go along with it. That kind of the social dynamic. Like the Milgram experiment, that type of thing, right? Same people who would do that would love to do the jog for the charity thing. And so it's all about show. And again, I'm not against people doing things for charity in itself, but there is this thing in Ireland, and it's probably a human nature thing maybe as well, but very much a rural Ireland sort of town. It's a rural Ireland thing, very much a GAA oriented thing as well, which is really like rooted in real Irish culture. It's one of our problems. It's not an outside thing. Is that it's the trocar box thing. It's like we just love to be seen to be doing what is deemed to be the right thing and to be Mr. Goody Two Shoes in some way. That is a craving among especially rural and especially, I would say, GAA people. There is some need to be part of the herd and the tribe, and then the tone is set from the top and you play into that basically. And it's a very dangerous thing because you can just be led around like an absolute dickhead, basically, if that's your modus operandi, and you actually don't have your own independent reading of what is moral, what is right in any given situation, but a critical thinking of your own, that kind of stuff. So they think, well, we're going to be down there now at the protest, and they call us racist, the bad guys, but here we are in our pink breast cancer research thing, so we're very good, like, you know. Yeah, that's not going to help you. We're beyond all that, right? Like, that's not, we're past that. We are in deep dark waters, and like, your old mentality is not going to work. And if you want to stay in that, just get out of the way and just, like, don't bother wasting weeks and months protesting the site. Don't bother being angry about it in future. Just give up and go back to gardening. Forget about it if you can't hack the fact that some of this stuff is not officially the good guy thing, and you're going to have to live with it. You're just going to have to balls up on it. If you can't handle that, then go do the darkness into light run, do the color run, and enjoy yourself, right? You go over there and do that, but you're not going to stop an endless wave of ever worsening tyranny from coming to your doorstep. I'm just telling you the truth. So anyway, I'll carry on. The resort itself is surrounded, blah, blah, blah. They're complaining about not enough guards and doctors. We know that, so yeah, so they went to the High Court. The hotel is very famous. There's loads of employment. Very good. It's sad that it's gone. Here's so this woman says, I'm living here with my husband 21 years. I'm originally from Dublin. 3 years before we moved here, we had a golfing weekend here, and we then found ourselves buying a house. We absolutely loved it. The impression I get is that people are doing well enough down here. I'd say it's a lot of boomers doing well enough inside in the hotel in Cashel, getting the scones every Wednesday morning or whatever, and then going off to, you know, the spa or whatever. And, you know, look, the Brazilian brings the scone in the hotel and she stays quiet and she brings it and she does it well. And so we're happy out, right? And then we go off to our, we have our sort of private healthcare. We have our money for all our stuff, housing and the rest. We're all sorted. So ordinarily, we wouldn't want to be involved in this funny business of opposing immigration, mass immigration, which drives up rents and houses for people who are in the shit, basically, which is a majority of younger people. We're grand. So ordinarily, we wouldn't want to sully ourselves with that kind of stuff, because as far as we can see, the country's going amazing. But they brought it to our front door in the hotel. So now we want to take a strategic, respectable opposition against it through the courts, and we don't want outside groups and all the rest of it. So that's grand. And so she says, we have a farmer's field out the back of our home, and we have deer. There's deer. Oh, it's lovely, right? I mean, like, if you're an average 25-year-old trying to make it, and you have to work in Dublin, and you're in Lucan paying €1,600 for a shite place to live, and you're surrounded by foreigners, and there's no deer, there's no golfing, there's no beautiful old hotel, and if you get a toothache, you're in big trouble because you can't afford to deal with it, right? You're going to actually probably have a mental health episode because you don't know how you're going to deal with that, right? But they're down in Cashel getting the scones and enjoying the deer. I don't know about this woman in particular, but you get the idea. So, you know, we'll hold the nose when we want to oppose it. Miss Kennedy explains how the ball, okay, blah, 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 blah. So the hotel took a decision to house Ukrainians after the war. The hotel owners were going to upgrade to the manor house and the golf course. A consortium then bought it. Now, see how these people were brought in. And I don't know if people think I'm being cruel. I'm not trying to be harsh. I support the people of Dundrum in their issue. And I'm sure lots of them there are sound and know exactly what's going on. I'm just talking about the overall tenor of this stuff as it came out. So the hotel took a decision to house Ukrainians after the war. Bear in mind now, this is when all the flags were up, right? So here we get back to the darkness into light mentality, the troker box, where the government have decided over. One day we just woke up, right? Like 6 months previously, if you asked one of these people who ended up having the Ukraine flag outside their house and the rest of it, right? And we need to help the poor devils, the poor creators up in Ukraine, right? If you had told them a month before we were heard about Putin's unprovoked war against Ukraine and all that, if you had said, tell me something about Yanukovych, tell me something about the Maidan, like basic history about Ukraine, tell me anything about it. Actually, even after the Russian war began in 2022, I think it was, even after that, if you said, tell me anything about it, they couldn't tell you anything about it, but they knew it was the flag. That was your colour run. That was your Troker box. I knew you had to be about it, right? And you had to support it, even though you know nothing about it, what's going on, and you've just been led by the nose on it, the latest fad, right? And so you have, no opposition to the Ukrainians coming in because they've been spoon-fed this like blitz propaganda. So, and then the hotel owners were going to upgrade the manor house and the golf course. So at the time, obviously, people said, wait, you're bringing in these Ukrainians. We're kind of okay with them because they're kind of more familiar. And also, we've been propagandized with the flags and all that. So, and it's temporary. It's just for a quick war, isn't it? Okay, yeah. And then you're going to get back to upgrading the house and the golf course. You might even use the funds you take from the government to do it. And the hotel owner or whoever goes, big thumbs up emoji, right? Absolutely. Now, fuck off. And go home and forget about it and fuck off. Thanks. And totally, we're going to develop this. We can't wait to do it. No, fuck off. So someone goes then, okay, brilliant. Okay, cool. Not realizing that, no, you idiot. No, they're getting the Ukrainians in. It's now a plantation center. Now they can sell it to the likes of Quanta Capital or one of these things as a big, like, this place is now locked in as an IPAS migration plantation center forevermore. We've the hooks are in. It's not a hotel anymore. There's easy state money there, and it's not going back. These things don't go backwards, right? So they got lured along with that happy days. It was only meant to be a temporary arrangement. Oh, we've heard that before. It's purely about money and less hassle, do you think? And you don't have to worry about services if you lease it to the state. Shock. Imagine my shock, right? Our big thing here, there was no problem with the Ukrainians here. So they love to say that. It's not against immigration. We're not racist. None of that. We love you. Stop, right? Our big thing here, there was no problem with Ukrainians here. This is going to turn into a permanent situation. Again, it is a permanent situation. It was a permanent situation all along, right? Years ago, before anything even started, when you were born and raised with that mentality, and the rest of the country and all the rest of the people in your community and in Ireland in general, so long as that mentality has been in us and survived because of, I don't know, perceived easier times, then it was always a fait accompli, right? If you're going to be made a bitch, so to speak, I'm not speaking about women here, I'm speaking just about the colloquial figure of speech of like made a submissive, abused entity in the situation, right? If you're going to be made a fool of, then they'll do it. There's no end to the amount of exploiters and tyranny who will come in and just flip your village and whole country for a profit, like a merger and an acquisition, and just destroy the place and wring every last buck out of it. No limit to what they will destroy. If you're not able to stand up to it in a way that might be uncomfortable and cause you grief, if you can't handle that, which clearly these people can't, then it's done and dusted before the idea ever even gets up off the ground. It always comes back to you, really. It's sort of like there's no easy life, there's no easy society or nation, there's no beautiful community that just exists on darkness into light runs and I'm great. That you can't have that. You can only have it for a short while, and then it'll be ripped apart before long. That's just always been like that, always will be like that. So anyway, so let's see. Yeah, protect our community, no direct provision here. Dundrum says no to IPAS. So then they held a community meeting on the Friday night before this article to discuss with their legal representative. So then they had their case going, an injunction. They probably had a solicitor in and they thought they were mad shams. And that this was all very respectable. So the court battle. So the court battle is a bit of a Mickey Mouse thing, as of course it was always going to be. The residents of Dundrum, led by Westmeath man Patrick McGreal, first went to the High Court looking for injunctions and for the court's permission to challenge any attempt to use Dundrum House Hotel to accommodate asylum seekers. They were looking, I'll just kind of skip through. So they put in their first thing, and then Miss Justice Niamh Hyland refused to amend the title of the proceedings to include the people of Dundrum, as well as McGreal. As she said, the people of Dundrum was not a legal entity. So she's saying, I can't adjudicate a case on behalf of the people of Dundrum, brought on behalf of the people of Dundrum. That's not a tangible entity, which is funny because it's like that speaks to the heart of the problem, isn't it? It's like this justice system, this sort of the verbiage of our governance and laws and everything does not recognize something as simple and common sense as the people of Dundrum, the people who live here. Some of the people who've moved here and organically over time form a people. There's a people of this town. This town has a character as distinct from somewhere 30 miles away or 5,000 miles away. It's this isn't just a random place with random buildings and infrastructure on it. There are people to this place, right? It changes. Some people leave, some people come and go, but overall there's a core operating people to this place. And the state sort of hold their nose and go, first off, there's no people at Dundrum, which is funny. That's the first issue. So the judge transferred the case on the last day of the legal term to Mr. So they say, we're not going to go as people of Dundrum. We'll transfer it to, we'll change our name or whatever it is. Anyway, so another judge takes it up, and Mr. Justice Holland, who over a number of hours heard the application from McGreal, he refuses to grant an emergency injunction to stop the asylum seekers being accommodated in the hotel. He says no case had been made to grant an ex parte injunction where only one side is represented. I'll just try to move on to the substance. So he kind of laughs, or he looks down his nose on them a bit. He says they don't have a legal right to veto who lives among them. And again, we're back to the veto thing. I'll talk about that in a sec. You know, again, there's a difference between someone who's moved to your town to move into a house bought on the private market, and it's just some family or whatever from outside of town. And you can't say, oh, we don't want you here or whatever. It's like, well, we do have private property and the right to move, come and go where you live. You know, you are entitled to do that. Like, so if the house is up for sale, then anybody can buy it in free and fair fashion. And you don't get to say you don't like their, you know, the colour of their gym. That's different than when the government brings along 10 busfuls of Africans and says, this town is now African town. You know, it's a complete, the context is like they're conflating these two things on behalf, which is the state is openly doing, like openly, flagrantly, just conflating the two things as if they're the same is insane. But this judge, you know, chooses to go along with that. Funny how all the judges and all the government tend to interpret something that most people with common sense understand. They tend to interpret it in this nihilistic sort of manner, where they pretend not to be able to understand common sense. They all end up on that side of the fence. How well this judge didn't say, oh, well, I see the issue here. I understand. And the state has its policy, but I actually see it differently based on just my own common sense. So I'm going to read it differently. And with my powers as a judge and my interpretation of the law, I'm going to adjudicate this way. No, never. It's not going to happen like that. Are you stupid? Right? These people are all buddies. They're all friends. They're all part of the same system. On highly charged, crucial matters of state, core issues like this, a judge is not going to dissent from the state on it. If you think they are, you're deluded. You don't understand politics, deep politics, which is why you could have done with engaging with nationalists a bit better, because you wouldn't have wasted your time with this. So he further looks down he looks down his nose at them. He says there's a notable peculiarity that the person who brought the case lived in Westmeath, and he did not understand why Dundrum residents were not named. He said concern was raised over potential intrusion into private dwellings. So one of the concerns in the case was that someone might intrude on private property from the hotel, one of these migrants. And he says it is saying that international protection applicants are more likely to be burglars than those staying as guests at the hotel or Ukrainian refugees staying there. I lend no weight to that assertion, the judge stated. Now, of course, it's very obvious that you have more risk of being burgled or broken into or hurt or anything from a bunch of random, not just unvetted, but unvettable men from Algeria or wherever it is, right? The Congo, than from some rich khaki wearing boomer American on a golf trip on holidays, millionaire, right? Obviously. So anyway, the judge doesn't understand that. He's too smart to understand that. Fair enough. Legal sources say it is now open for residents to apply to the High Court for an injunction hearing, but on notice to the other side, which the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage. Sorry, that sentence is garbled. I don't really understand it myself. It's all just a bit whatever. But so basically, the court thing went nowhere, and the guards ended up just forcing it through. That was what it was. So I just want to play you just on the mentality. I have to just play this video for you. It's from Jonathan Bowden. I should have it here. Or do I not? It's just a very good clip. I should be able to find it here. It's just on the mentality of people. Basically, like, my argument is that, like, the case was never going to go anywhere, and the idea of cutting yourself off or condemning Kulak or whatever is just ridiculous. And Jonathan Bowden, nationalist sort of orator, spoke about this in 2011. So this is 13 years ago. He had this, and I've seen it a million times. The attitude perfectly encapsulated.
And they would love that somebody came forward magically without trouble and without fuss to deal with it on their behalf. They want no unpleasantness and they want no nastiness, particularly in their own name. But at the same time, if somebody does things of any sort that could be ascribed to that, they would run away and hide initially, be privately pleased, condemn the people who did it, support the people who were against them, and yet at the same time have a secret smirk and smile on their face about the whole thing. And they would do all of that simultaneously. And that's what people are like. And that's what our own people are like up to a point. And that's the funk and the state of internal confusion and bemusement that our people are in.
And you know who aren't like that? The people who aren't like that, who secretly want it to be stopped, and they know they don't want a lot of foreigners being brought in. So even if we put aside the idea of like criminal acts or whatever, like throwing stuff at guards or burning places down and all that, which we all condemn, obviously, etc. But even if you look at just like, that's a bit heated of a subtopic, right? But even if you just look at the simple act of saying, I just don't want a load of foreigners in the town, it's not really just about services or whatever. I don't even have to prove that I'd be in any more danger necessarily. I may or may not be, probably would be, from unvetted men and all that. But even before you get to that, I just don't want like 250 men, foreigners here, because of course we have our own way. You know what I mean? I don't need to come up with an excuse for why I'm against that. I just am. Like, I mean, who wouldn't be? You have a community, you like how it is. You have some new people come and go here and there, mostly Irish. So it's familiar. I like it. I like being around Irish people. I know and trust and like Irish people. And even not just Irish people in general, Irish people of this town in particular, like me. You know, we've naturally bonded and come together over generations here, and we have our own thing. So we don't want a bunch of foreign, like, young men around here. Just full stop, right? You know, they can't say that, but of course they kind of like when someone else says it. They like to hear it, but then they'll condemn you, and they'll condemn you, but they're glad you said it, and someone's saying it, but I don't want to say it, and I'll run away and I'll hide. And Bowden describes it perfectly. But it's funny that you don't get that attitude, that weak, sniveling attitude from Muslims, Jews, black people, and stuff like that. They don't. When one of theirs comes out and says it like it is, or stands up for their people or whatever, they don't all run for the hills and condemn them and throw stones from behind the bush and all this kind of stuff. You know, it's horrible, actually. I really wish, and a lot of Irish people are great. You know, actually, Kulak, like, they stuck with people. They didn't sell people down the river. They didn't sell their own down the river, or you know, do these kind of bitch moves like Dundrum did, if I'm being honest. And of course, this isn't everybody in Dundrum. I'm just saying the people who spoke for Dundrum, we'll say. So I'm just looking for some other sources. I thought this was relevant, right? I said this on X as well, that Dundrum could have done with the presence of national activists and live streamers to document the migrant occupation. Matty McGrath knew enough to be there. So I'm referring to Matty McGrath. I'm not casting too many aspersions on him. I don't really know. I saw what I saw up in Rosscray. He was part of the little bunch of gangsters up on the stage telling Phil he couldn't be there live streaming, and the Shane Lee crew and I forget the names of the other arseholes. There was obviously Lowry, McGrath was in there too, and they had this big scheme to keep outsiders out and the rest of it. And of course, we see how that worked out for Rosscray. I don't think they're having what was the special government hotel they were going to open? Hilarious. And of course, Shane Lee and the boys, all political capital, and Lowry and McGrath and all that. They take all the political capital out of it. Well, the lads stood up for us. The lads were good. They stood up for us and all that. Well, they did, yeah. But I mean, look, nothing came of it. And they're not running on a nationalist ticket. They're not supporting the in Rosscray who are maintaining a nationalist sort of thing in the town. They're going around the place. There's big WhatsApp groups in Rosscray now. There's a whole sort of thing. Shane Lee are having nothing, and the rest of them are having nothing to do with that, right? And Lowry. So, you know, the whole thing feels like a stitch up to me, and I don't know where Matty McGrath fits into all that, let's say, right? But this is from Gript, I think. So it said that this is after everything went down in Dundrum. It said locals had placed a barrier at the gates of Dundrum House Hotel, but they were dragged away from that by members of the Gardaí this morning. Four vans of riot squad Gardaí were present this morning, local TD Matty McGrath said. So he's talking to Gript. And were being used to force through a centre that the village did not want, right? Probably quoting McGrath there. The Tipperary TD, who said he was at the protest since last night as an observer, very clever to make sure he says observer, right? He's a crafty man now, I will say. Whether he's a good or bad guy, I don't know, but he's crafty. He said he was at the protest last night as an observer, said the roadblocks had been placed on roads leading into the village while there had been a high presence of Gardaí all night. He said that he had been told that the authority of the riot squad superseded that of the local Gardaí. Now, that alone is very troubling, right? So local Gardaí themselves are pushed out of the way, but effectively. Now, or maybe that's just a way to, you know, help the local Gardaí save face. I'm not sure, but the thing is that what this tells me when I read this is that, and much like I remember back in Rosscray when he spoke about the Garda blitz on the people there that day in Rosscray, I think he was quoted in an article talking about it, like, if I recall correctly, that he sort of had, because he's a TD or whatever, he had kind of heard about it, I suppose, from so-and-so that this thing was going to go down and he was against it. And I think at the time he said, I had heard about it, but I didn't know they were going to be so brutal type of thing, you know. Now, my argument here is, and same with Dundrum here, he said he was there. So what is it? He was at the protest since last night. So the thing goes on, the High Garda presence through the night, and then in the morning they force it through. And Matty McGrath is saying that he was at it since last night. So he was at it through the night, it seems like, right? So obviously he's not going to stay up all night every night in Dundrum or Rosscray. He was there for this show, right? And the thing is he might lend his support to them, and he might be a great guy. I don't know. I'm not a mind reader, but this is a problem of the likes of the Matty McGraths and the Shane Lees in the way they played it in Rosscray, right? Which, and again, if someone says, "Oh, Gerald, you're a rabble rouser, don't be talking shite. Leave Rosscray do what they do," or Shane Lee, you know, Shane Lee represents the people. It's like, well, look, all I'm saying is that Rosscray just got bent over the barrel for like the 7th time, and any nationalist sort of fervor that could have been gained from Rosscray to elect a real nationalist, the likes of Patrick Quinlan or something like that, because of course Rosscray would be ripe for that. You know what I mean? Send a real councillor representative, hardcore nationalist into the government. I mean, that's like, if they're going to be beaten on the physical front, they could at least respond politically with a thing that gives the government a real bloody nose, something that the government hate, which is to see hardcore, real, proper, sincere, like ideological nationalists elected and made their representative, right? Because it's brilliant. But no, they stick with Shanley and Lowry and all this. And of course, the government are happy enough with that. So are the local meat factory people. So are the lads, the gone beans on the golf course. They're all happy because that's the status quo, you know. So, you know, I do wonder about that stuff. That, you know, the obvious thing to do would be at the likes of a Dundrum the day before this. Like if someone like McGrath knows and others locally know that this is, a few have a tip off that this is going to go down in Dundrum, well, why not just announce it to the entire country? Just say, hey, the Gardaí are coming in here, so, and then for the other operators in Dundrum to get off the high horse and say, we're about to be pushed aside by the Gardaí here. They've got a plot on the way. Anyone in the country who supports us, we've no issue with outside groups, right? Anyone locally, down the road, up in Donegal, doesn't matter. Anywhere in the country, anyone who supports us against this state tyranny from happening, we need your support, right? Wouldn't that be the logical thing to do? Surely, right? Would be the logical thing to do at that point. So why don't Matty McGrath or the other spokespeople for the local protest thing, why don't they do that at the last minute? You've nothing else to lose at that point, right? You know, the Gardaí are basically tooling up. So look, the best thing you could do is have the nationalist live streamers there, you know, the usuals. You could have Gripped, they're allowed and all that. We get that, but you could have Phil there, you could have so and you don't have to embrace them. You just say, hey, people are free to come here. You know what I mean? I'm not endorsing it. Everybody comes here. You can have it both ways, where you keep your hands clean, your powder dry, but you also, you know, have an open platform for people to come and, you know, it's like the thing is, people don't want it being turned into an issue, big issue, but it's like actually the more of a, not a circus is a bad word, obviously, but the more the dial, the temperature gets turned up on these things, the better from a position of opposing the state. So like the state would love it the way, the Dundrum way, the Rosscray way, right? They love that. They love a couple of local wheeler dealer politicians to kind of become the representatives, but keep it all quiet, keep it local, keep it respectable and respectful and all that, and don't have outside agitators and groups and all that. And then the Gardaí will come through, roll it up, and then the politician and the various like little leaders who kept it that way the whole time will sort of pack their bags and leave and be like, we gave it a good shot, so I expect your vote next time, right? You know, I gave it a good fighting, failing chance. So, but like, I'm going to go home and I'll be on to the next one. You know, that kind of way. My job is to go around with a little sack collecting political capital. And as far as I'm concerned, I've done that. So mission accomplished for me. Your town will get planted. Hey, look, yeah, I sort of supported you. I gave it a shot. There was nothing I could do. You know, it is what it is. So I'm gone. Whereas it's like, well, no, if that wasn't the chief, if you really wanted to stop, you would have said, let's drop the trying to silo away the political capital for yourself in some way, or whatever the arrangement you have going on there is. You would abandon that and say, no, we need everyone and anyone from locally, from far further. If anybody's against this, we would love and welcome and appreciate your support at this time. But no, that doesn't happen. There's a cloistered thing. And you see it all over the country, but it was especially present in Rosscray and Dundrum, and the same cast of characters. Some of the similar ones were present there. And again, I don't know. That's not, I can't say for Matty McGrath. I don't, maybe he's just honest and doing his thing, and that is what it is. But I don't see why there is this firewall against outside groups and all this kind of stuff. Again, if they did that in Rosscray and Dundrum and elsewhere, if they did that and just leave it to the lads with the bellies pouring out of the shirt, and leave it to the fellas who go around saying a lot, and you know, they have that sort of charm, political thing, that Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael ethos or something. You know, it's something you as a radical riffraff can't understand. Leave it to them, because they know how to operate, right? They know how it is. Well, it didn't look like that in Rosscray. It didn't look like that in Dundrum. So while I don't have the magical answer, they certainly don't either, right? Playing that game doesn't actually do anything. All it does is have the centre go through and prevents political fallout. It prevents Dundrum and Rosscray from being politically radicalised, electing candidates who stand up on just that issue, not just locally in Rosscray or Dundrum, but as a national issue, unapologetically. They don't say, I'm not racist and I'm not bad and I did the colour run and I did a Troco box. They don't do that. They just come out and say, I don't have to apologize for anything. We're the victims in Ireland. We're the victims of racism here, all right. Racism against Irish people. We're being attacked. We're being made into a minority. La, 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 la. Like just a straight up politician. Imagine they were popping out of Dundrum and Rosscray and all this as a result. Basically, it's a Pyrrhic victory. The government forced the asylum centre in, but then it leaves a population who are totally activated on this and now become politically radicalized on the issue going forward. Because that's all you have left at that point. You might as well. But if you have local Gambians there who sort of massage the whole thing away and make sure that the locals don't talk to these outside groups, well, that doesn't happen. So the one remaining victory you could have taken from this unfortunate situation is now quenched, right? It's gone. So that's the problem. That's the issue I have with it. And the other thing is, of course, the basic fact of like, if you compare it to a domestic violence situation or domestic abuse, there's a cult analogy and the domestic abuse analogy. So the classic husband who the wife says, oh, well, I was out doing the shopping. I started talking to this nice woman and we're actually going to go for coffee in a few days. We're going to take the kids and go for coffee and we're going to have a girl date or whatever. And the husband says, well, I don't want her putting ideas in your head now, okay? And this kind of stuff. And, so I'd rather you didn't meet her, to be honest. And you go, wait, you don't even know this woman, right? Can I'm an intelligent grown woman. I can meet her and decide if she's putting bad ideas in my head or not, And he goes, no. Don't just let me listen to her, right? I'll figure out if she's bad, I'll stay away from her, and if she's good, I'll be good friends with her. I can judge that. You go, no, I'll have to judge her. I don't want them getting into your head. She'll get into your head now, and before you know it, you'll be getting in big trouble making a show out of yourself around town. And I don't want you drawing bad attention on yourself, right? Because you don't know what kind of riffraff they could be, and the rest of it. You'd start looking at that husband and saying, or whatever, and just saying, that's immediately a red flag, right? You're in dodgy territory there, where you're being told, and like basically someone who on the face of it is your best pal and agrees with you and would be nice for you to know is the very person who you should stay away from, because they'll put bad ideas in your head. They'll make a show of you and you don't want to be around them. Stay away from them at all costs. The first person you have to be suspicious of in that situation is, of course, the person who is telling you that clearly, right? And of all the people that you might want to go out of your way to expose yourself to, it's the person that you're being told specifically you should not expose yourself to, and who you should not communicate with, and who you should not associate with. That is, if you're being common sense about it, probably the very person who you need to at least give a chance to and hear out, because something sounds amiss here. The way you're being instructed by this one party not to talk to the other party. My attitude would always be, well, hold on a second, I'll talk to that party. In fact, I'm going to specifically go out of my way to talk to those people now. Now you've provoked me. I need to talk to them. But I'll keep talking to you too. I'll talk to everybody, right? I'll be fine. I'll judge, right? So, and in fact, maybe you should take a step away from me here a little bit. Step back off me, right? That would be the attitude with a control freak. The other one is, of course, a cult. So Jonestown or whatever, Jim Jones and all that, is the first thing they want to do in a situation like that. Classic trait of any cult is there's the like sexual abuse kind of, the leader is like, God told me I need to have sex with all the women here, this kind of stuff, right? But, and God said that I need all the money and all the good food and all the rest of it. But the other one is, of course, when new members are brought into the cult, the first thing they want you to do is cut off the family and the friends, cut off all outside influences. Because in order to pour your control into somebody else, you need to cut off alternative sources of information and alternative relationships. Especially if you had a friend who was critical of the cult or was skeptical about it, that person would have to go, right? And that's how it works. So I just feel like, anytime I see this stuff around, it's a bit dodgy. And then I wonder why, let's say someone like McGrath wouldn't just say, listen, this is going through here. We might as well throw the kitchen sink at it and just rally everybody. We've done the failed court thing now. We've done the respectable thing, so-called. Matty McGrath could kind of say, I've gotten my political capital out of it. I've shown up. I've taken the pictures, whatever. I'll probably get voted. Now, why don't we just get all the nationalist activists, the YouTubers, the whole lot, everybody in, and that'll attract the Americans and the Brits and the European audience, Western and beyond, who just support or oppose this immigration thing happening and support Ireland, the plucky little country. You've endless support out there, but they're not interested in you complaining about facilities and saying that you're respect. But they don't want to hear that. They want to hear the real truth. And of course, nationalist Irish activists and stuff can sort of bridge that for you and get that out there. So it's strange that they don't do that, and I found that kind of weird. So yeah, Gardaí to maintain presence at Dundrum House. Again, the superintendent is Superintendent Eddie Golden, and Gardaí will remain in position until they're confident the area is safe. I thought that was funny, sort of ironic, because of course once you have these 250 plus random men who nobody knows, they could, like, this is, in most cases this is not true, and I'm exaggerating, I know, but in theory the person could be a cannibal from the jungles of the Congo, right? And nobody has any idea. There's no way of knowing. They could go to Paris for a year, they could spend a year in London, they could disappear off, go through one of these human trafficking ops, and show up in Ireland, just again unvettable. You have no idea who these people are, and socially you can't say, oh, so you're from you can't play the, do you know, I have a friend living there actually, do you know him, and what job did you do, and this kind of stuff. You can't socially trace this person who probably doesn't even speak English. You just have this random strange vagrant, a global vagrant man living in your community, hundreds of them. You can't do anything about it. And the Gardaí is saying they'll remain in position until they're confident the area is safe. Well, I can tell you that the area is going to go, it's not getting any safer. So he's going to be there for a while. But again, the superintendent, Eddie Golden, they'd probably say, oh, well, he's a good man and he's respectable. He's respectable. He's the superintendent. And Roderick O'Gorman is the minister for whatever he is. Respectable. So, and Sharon Violan on the news is respectable. And your man from the Examiner. And the Clare PPN, or not Clare, the Tipperary PPN person is respectable. They have an official title. So no problem associating with them. Yeah, that is Dundrum. And the idea that they would go to the courts and stick with, again, the respectable thing and condemn Kulak and condemn the so-called racists and all that, and think that that's going to work for them is crazy. One of the things as well, someone pointed out on X, is that in a way it's a good thing, because a lots of places have tried this, but nowhere tried it as strenuously as Dundrum. Even after all the years of learning and surely knowing better, Dundrum stuck to the old plan, the deluded old naive plan, and said, we'll go down this road and we'll pursue that aggressively. And we'll pursue it to the ends of the earth kind of thing, right? They did that and they got pushed aside, and they have gained nothing from it. They have learned nothing from it. They have made no good nationalist connections. So when shit hits the fan in Dundrum even further as time goes on, well, they'll just be sort of known a little bit as the ones who weren't really there when it counted. They were only interested in preserving their own little petty reputations in the present moment. And so there will be that bitter taste a little bit, compared to the likes of a Newtown and Kennedy, who they were respectable for sure, but they weren't going out of their way to cut people off or condemn people and the rest of it. They didn't do that. And Newtown and Kennedy is dear to people's hearts now because of that. And of course, Dundrum will be too, but there will be a bitter taste in people's mouths going forward on this. So the planters are in. They've hurt their reputation only with the people who support them ultimately, and it's all done anyway. And what they've done is provided an example. In future, you just have to point out any future town and just say, listen, Dundrum have tried that. It doesn't work. Coolock, Newtown, Mount Kennedy, these other situations, certain things transpired from those, certain things didn't. But something came out of those things. And I'm not condemning or condoning anything in particular, but various results or positives came out of some of those things. Whereas in the Dundrum sense, nothing positive comes from it. There is no gain. There is no morale. There's no nothing. It is just abject defeat, failure. And as I think it was, I hate to do this kind of thing. I think it was Dostoevsky, in one of, was it I don't know, I forget which novel it was. It's just a famous quote of from one of his novels that the whole thing about the worst part of it being that you betrayed yourself for nothing, you know. Not just that you betray someone else, but that you betray yourself, and then on top of that you betray yourself, and there was never really anything to even gain. You had you had yourself, you know, in a little way. It's just kind of sad, but so that's the example going forward. And I just want to talk about like the appeal to a normal state. So you want to say I want to, like, again, Holly Cairns here, she's respectable. I'm not. She's respectable.
Have a veto in terms of who lives within their neighbourhood.
None of us have a veto. None of us have a veto. Calls for.
So this is from Gript. It's a competition ones have no veto. The mantra that they're all going off again. Patrick Quinlan, National Party, and all these other people, they're not respectable. They're part of this outside group, and we're not part of all that. They don't want to stop mass immigration and dumping people on towns. Think of the irony. They're like, anybody here who thinks that we should stop all mass immigration, or most of it, and we should totally pull back on immigration, and we should deport a lot of people who shouldn't be here, and we shouldn't dump hundreds of men on small towns, foreign men on small towns. Anybody who thinks that, we don't want here, right? No warnings against anybody else, only that. So here we are, a town who are having 250 foreign men dumped on us, and we don't want it, and we oppose it. And what we're saying is anyone around the country who generally opposes that as a matter of principle and overall, you specifically were naming and calling out saying, we don't want your support. We don't want anything to do with you. We're not bad like you. What? But of course, they would say then, well, Leo Varadkar and Holly Cairns are respectable people. They were on the telly, right? But here are all these people saying you've no veto, so they can bring in. So let's say you live in a village of 250 people. In theory, they can bring in 2,000 people, as we see with the likes of Thornton Hall. In theory, you could have a village of 200 people. We can bring in 2,000, and you've no veto over that. Same way you don't veto if someone moves into the house for sale next door, and you know a family move in, and you don't like the look of them. You don't, as if those are the same thing. So, or if you're in a country of 5 million people or whatever, and they say, well, we're going to increase the population by another 10 million over the next 50 years or whatever it is, make you a minority in your own country without ever asking you. That's just like someone moving into the community. You don't have a veto. You know, apparently that's the state. Again, that's respectable.
No community has a right to veto other people.
Maybe Dalkey, but no community except for the really exclusive ones. Maybe only 3 or 4 in the whole country might get away with it.
People moving into their community.
No one has a veto over who lives in their community.
No one has a veto on who lives in an area.
Nobody does have a veto in terms of who lives within their neighbourhood.
None of us have a veto. None of us have a veto.
Calls for consultation.
Now, this is your government, right? This is your democracy. Bear in mind, these are all different parties. These are all different parties with the same verbatim mantra. These were meant to be opposition parties, right? All with the same verbatim mantra. Word for word. Same way it wasn't too long ago they were talking about moral and legal obligations. Verbatim, those words, right? So this is the kind of system you're dealing with. This is your democracy, your government. The guards, all the institutions, absolutely rotten to the core, and are all lined up in agreement and support of, effectively, compliance with them bringing 500 men into your local tiny community or whatever it is, right? You think you're appealing to them, but they're in support of doing that. They want to do that, and they'll bring in another 500. And so long as they get paid their little wage along the way, their little bag of silver or whatever, they'll support it. If they say, we'll bring in another 3,000 men, and the policy will be that they'll call to your door every evening at 7 o'clock and give you a big kick in the bollocks, right? You might think, well, that's a ridiculous thing to say. Listen, what I'm saying is that if they were told and paid by this power system that they sort of work for, if that was what was thrown on their table and they said, you have the media backing and the guards will back it up and all that, you have the power behind you on that, We just need you to come up and crow about how it's essential for our society that we have everyone get a big kick in the bollocks. They would support it all day long for you, right? You make no mistake. We've seen it multiple times. We are not dealing with a normal government or people where we have solidarity, a little bit of trust in our leaders or some sort of connection at all. That's gone out the window. You might as well be dealing with a foreign occupying hostile military force and government, occupation government. That's all you have. And if you think I'm crazy for talking like that, well, look, just, watch the videos from Dundrum, live in Dundrum and see what's happening. Do I sound like I'm wrong or what? And does this sound insane to you? All these opposition people using the same words, saying you have no veto on who lives in your community, even though we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of men systematically brought into the country by the government. This isn't just random organic people who happen to move to your community. The government themselves forced them into your community. These people didn't arrive randomly and buy a house. Right.
Suggest that communities have a veto over who moves in, and that isn't right. And calls for consultation can even offer a platform to those who will never welcome inward migration.
It is not the position of the Labour parties that communities
so they're saying,
should be.
They're also saying that, like, you can't have a veto. You can complain in vain. You can communicate and consult and all that, but at the end of it, we sort of have this sneaking suspicion that when you complain and you say there's not enough doctors, maybe underneath it all, what might be going on is that you're just opposed to massive immigration, like us bringing hundreds of thousands of people in every year, which necessitates us to put hundreds of people into villages here and there because, of course, the numbers add up that way. That's how it has to be. We suspect that you might just be against that as a matter of fact, right? And it's like, well, yeah, duh, we are against it. And that's the problem with the Dundrums of the world. It's like, yeah, you're going along with their sort of code of silence, not just saying what it is. You just don't want this happening. None of us do. The vast, like 80 plus, 90 plus, whatever it is, depending on the poll, people in Ireland don't want it. It's obvious, right? Only people who are paid to do this, which is a cadre of government and guards and the rest of it, they're paid sort of by the system itself to enforce it. They'll do it. And the journalism, the media, the RTs, the examiners and all this you're lining up to take pictures with, they're all in support of this. And they think it's funny, the fact that you can't say it's immigration. They're like, oh, we think it might just be immigration you're against, to be honest. And that definitely wouldn't be legitimate. It's like, whoa. Why wouldn't it be? What are we living in? A dictatorship of tyranny here? Open one? Or we're like, what if we all just came out and were very honest with you and said, no, it is immigration, for sure. There's most of us are against it. So do you mind there just turning the tap off? Any chance? They'd say, no, we're not doing that. You said, well, why are you doing it? Who asked you to do it? Nobody. Oh, this is independent. This is for the Range Rover squad and for the private jet squad and the investment fund squad and all the rest of it, like all these vested interests and NGOs and all that. It's for them. Like, this country is off the rails. We totally don't work for you. We are totally against you. That's out in the open.
Consulted, implying that they should have a veto.
You can't just give people the free rein and say, well, you're allowed veto an area, because that's suddenly taken over by those who simply don't want this to happen at all.
I think
yeah, we don't want it to happen at all. I don't want you to bring in 250,000 people every year because you've said some random war. Oh, no, there's a war in Sudan. No, listen, there's always a war. And then when you run out of wars, alleged wars, you'll say, oh, well, there's a climate emergency. Oh, that's just the way the world is going. Even though it's not going that way in China, India, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Africa, Central Asia, or Russia. I mean, most of the world there already, right? But it's the world if you say it's the world. Lies. But you can't just say, well, yeah, I am against it. It's like, what's wrong with being against it? Like, can you describe to me why it's wrong? We can't have conversations.
Very few people I've spoken to in my constituency or elsewhere that has any want for a veto. And if he did, I'll be the first person to tell them they're not getting it.
I'm opposed to giving anyone or any group a veto over emergency refugee accommodation.
No community has the right to veto anybody living in their community. And when I talk about communication, it isn't, a dialogue or negotiations.
I would be quite concerned that the promises being made is exactly.
You get the idea. So that's from Gript. And fair play to them. Go follow them and all that if you don't already. They've someone put the work into compiling that. So if I'm using it, fair credit to them. Go check them out. But so here's just another one on your, again, respectable, right? So now bear in mind, I'm not respectable, right? So I am riffraff, radical, uncouth, and dangerous to be seen with and all that, right? But the tidy town person, the PPN person, your local anti-racist activist paid by the government, the chief superintendent locally, the GA manager who's got a little bit of a finger in the pie on the asylum centre scam, he's fine. He's down the carvery with the pints for everyone and the rest of it. He's grand, right? Now, they're all in support of a system like this. This is from Thornton Hall in Dublin, right? These foreign security guards, jacked up security guards, with the guns blazing, right? In masks, asking a woman why she's there and telling her to get out. I mean,
from
again,
where you come here? Sorry.
I'm from Ireland.
No. From where coming here?
From the road.
Which way?
From the
no PSA badge, no nothing, no anything, right? Random, like this is like the little green men in Crimea in 2014, I think it was. Like the same, like a random unnamed military occupation, basically.
This way?
Yeah.
Come, please.
It's okay, I can let myself out. It's all good. All good.
From where you come here?
Now, I don't expect this lady to stand up to these guys or whatever. They're intimidating blokes and all that. But one thing is that, like, I think it'd be reasonable to just say to them, well, no, I'm not going anywhere because I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, this is public property. I don't know. I didn't see any sign, right? And as far as I'm concerned, you're some strange man in a t-shirt and a face mask. Can we start with hello? We'll start with that, right? Hello. Then we'll go on to who are you? I'm so and so. Who are you? Who do you work for? What's your name? What's your badge number? What agency do you work for? Who are you? Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm being told where to walk and what to do and being accosted by a strange man in a mask. So if anything, I feel like defending myself, or at least definitely not following your orders. Call the guards if you want to. But in the meantime, at best, you can just tell me who you are. Who are all of you people, right? What's going on here? And it's like, again, my point is that this is the respectable state that Dundrum is trying to appeal to, right? The respectable state. So again, the people who oppose mass immigration, the people who oppose strange men in masks going around the place, you don't want to be associated with them, but you would be associated with the Galway races and the Darkness into Light and Mary Kennedy and opening the furniture shop or whatever. The rest of it, right? This kind of, or the RTE Telly Bingo transgender woman or whatever, and you get what I mean. The world of respectable Ireland, right? That world. So if you said to Sharon Ní Bheoláin, what's the story there? I'm just speculating. Or some newspaper editor, they'd say, well, the world is changing and we have moral and legal obligations and we have to house these poor people who are fleeing endlessly from random places for no reason. And this super plantation centre in Thornton Hall is just going to help bring these people in, and it's actually going to enrich our economy. La la la. So you talk to Sharon Ní Bheoláin and David McWilliams and all that, they'd say, well, unfortunately, these people have to wear masks because there's thugs locally intimidating them. La 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 la. Like, you go to any respectable regime voice in Ireland, the chief superintendent, you name it, they'll effectively just kind of, at best, shrug at this, and at worst, sort of support it. They'll say, oh, well, it's just a guy doing his job. And he's doing a good thing because, it's good that the centre goes in. So who are you appealing to? You're not appealing to any common sense, sensible, the judge, the courts. They laughed at you. They laughed you out of the room. They said, well, I don't see why you'd be in more danger from a bunch of random Africans and Middle Easterns who are unvettable than from a rich tourist in this expensive hotel. I don't see why one or the other would be more or less likely to break into your home. Okay. So laughing at you, basically. And he would say, well, this gentleman here is doing a day's work and he's working for a mysterious security company. I see no issue here. And this other video of the concrete bollards and the fortress being built around Thornton Hall. which God knows how many people will be held there. Now we have UK reg and indeed no reg trucks, right? Now this is like the US occupation rolling into Baghdad to build up the green zone. That's the kind of thing it looks like, right? No regs. Some have, some don't, the regs, right?
No plates on the fronts of any of these trucks. No plates on the back.
Now, the funny thing is, right, as we saw with, I've forgotten his name, Joe, whatever his name was, these British security guards down in Clonmel, where they built up another one of these fortresses. Now, you know, these lads don't have ID and all that. And when press someone says, where's your PSA badge? They said, well, we're part of some EU sort of outside the country security group. So because of that, some piddling law here and there, or we don't really need PSA badges. They don't really direct you to the exact law. But if they say, well, we're close security, it's a certain type of security, we get away with it. And it's sort of like, okay, so the law is the law for everyone. But then the government and they can just kind of find a rule and bend it when they want to. So, you know, ordinarily someone has to have a PSA badge. That's the rule for security. It's a principle of, you know, someone telling you what to do regarding a place, that you know who they are. That you ultimately, one of the reasons they have PSA badges surely is that for situations where corporate tyranny power runs amok, you don't just have foreign mercenaries in masks running around the place and you have no idea, no traceability at all of this, and you're in a sort of a feudal tyranny where you've gone beyond the uniformed guard, the polite local officer, the accountability, the transparency, the familiarity, rule by consent, all that kind of stuff. That's all gone out the window now because it's just some masked man working for Globocon or whatever, and you've no rights at all. You know, you don't know who they are, and there's suddenly first there's 20, then there's 50, then there's 500, and you're kind of going, oh, what sort of tyranny have I just been led under? The idea of a guard and a security guard having a badge and accountability and rules is sort of, I suppose, it traces back to an element of that, right? And sure enough, here we are. So suddenly these guys are just in masks, and it's a case of like, oh well, either the rule doesn't matter to be enforced, and the guards are just going to look the other way, or the government have a subsection of a subsection of a subsection and an adjustment to the law, and they've kind of made it legal. So, but either way, it's inappropriate, right? That they're just taking what is generally speaking a practice and just kind of throwing it out the window when it suits them. Of course, if I drive by my car past any of these places, the guards see without my front reg, they'll flag me down and get me. But they'll say, oh, well, it's okay for these guys. We've bended and adjusted the law for them. It's just, you know, complete tyranny run amok. And you think you're appealing, again, back to Dundrum, you think you're appealing to that system for legitimacy, for moral legitimacy, and that you don't want to get in trouble with that system. We're past that. You know, we're so past that. It's crazy. Here's just another sort of random video of like the type of stuff. Like, this is just one of these centres where some local lads or Dublin lads, you see a lot of this around, they're sort of shouting at the lads going into the centre, giving it kind of hard to them, but just kind of visualize this. Just look at it or internalize it. So the local Irish lads are shouting dogs abuse at them. That doesn't really matter. Just look at this random centre with a big security fortification and look at these men hiding themselves, walking in. You're not dealing with like the poor hapless, or not hapless, but the poor woman with barely a shirt on her back and a poor baby, and she only wants to flee the war and go home as soon as she can, or something like that, right? You're not looking at that. Like, just so you can see clearly. Like, so the likes of these men, this is somewhere else, this is Clondalkin, but it's the same idea. The likes of these now will be marching in and out of the centre in Dundrum, and probably they'll have their own buddies working security in balaclavas and the rest of it, right? And they'll be marching around the place, in and out of town, like they own the place, because they do at that point. And of course, they have total backing of the Guard and the state. You know, where you couldn't look at, you know, look at them sideways Whereas, you know, they have free range to just go around and do what they want. They have nothing to do. They don't have jobs. They don't have responsibilities. They don't have connections. They don't have anything they have to abide by locally or be subjected to, you know, embarrass themselves or whatever. They can do what they want. They're completely free agents in and out of this hotel. Grown men, muscles out, the whole lot, right? And you go, and I have no right to say, hey, who are these men? Where are they from? What's going on here, right?
Don't say that when you get into it. Don't say into it.
Like, just as a point as well, you know, this whole meme you hear about, like, oh, they're bringing in UN troops and all this. You know, that's a bit of a taking it a bit far, let's say. The idea of like, oh, they've all got blue helmets in their luggage. I've said some of this before, but I think it's like a bit of a conspiratorial. It's over egging the pudding a bit, right? That it's official. They're all marked down on a list somewhere exactly as soldiers, and they're going to be activated sleeper cells, the rest of it. But it's sort of like that idea is true in spirit, that, you know, yeah, well, you have loads of like grown men with mysterious backgrounds who could be from, like, there could be an international arrangement somewhere. The idea that, well, you know, if you wanted to, you could take all these men and you could set up a security company called, and this, of course, as we see in Thornton Hall, is basically happening in front of us, obviously. You could set up a security company or a global security company, one of these like big firms, or set up a new one, a shell one, call it Global Secure Con or whatever, right? And the government bend the rules so that they can basically do what they want. They have special accommodations now. They can wear masks, no badges, no traceability, no FOI ability, none of that, right? And they're allowed to be sort of armed, or you make special rules, or even if they're not, but they have the right to do certain things. And then you sort of take all these men working in these centres and go, do you want to earn €15 an hour? You know what I mean? Do you want to, we'll put you into your own door accommodation, give you your €15 an hour, and now you work for Global Con Security or whatever, right? And you can go around in a ski mask and basically do what you want. In fact, you know, maybe we're doing repossessions because the economy is caved in and all these people who bought houses for 3 times the value they should have been can't pay for them anymore. Maybe we will turf these people out, actually. And maybe now there's a riot going on, you know, and we'll sign these people in an expedited fashion up to the Gardaí Nua, you know, type of thing. Now let's get all these hundreds of thousands of young men who are just around the country in camps, basically. They can be signed up to the guards. You tinker with the law here or there, twist a few dials, and suddenly they throw a Gardaí uniform in you. You're a guard now. And now the Gardaí are armed, and now the Gardaí have pepper spray and water cannons and carte blanche, and the government has said do what they want, and everyone is totally defeated. And how many young men even are in Ireland, right? A lot of them are in Australia and stuff. Or they're, you know, a lot of them turned to drugs and gone demoralized and living in their mammy's bedroom. They're weakened. It's sort of you know, so it's like, yeah, well, it might not be a UN army sort of like as officially as all that, but like the spirit of the thing doesn't bode well, the look of the thing. And that's the other story, by the way. I always say, like, let's say something like the video you just watched there, or yeah, like Thornton Hall, Newtown Mount Kennedy and Clonmel are good examples. Huge fortresses, Coolock in a way, these big concrete bollards, the silver fence, the whole lot, like all of these bizarre looking centres with huge fortifications and Gardaí everywhere, helicopters flying around sometimes, the whole lot. And then all these strange men, muscled up men with sort of ski masks on. One is like supposedly an asylum seeker there. The other one is a security guard there. And sort of, it's just very strange. They're all marching around the place together and totally protected in an actual like military grade fortification. If you were to say to someone who had just landed on Earth, like a totally ignorant human, doesn't know all the ins and outs of this bizarre system we're in, and they don't know. They've not heard the UN Army theory, right? They've not heard that, but they also haven't heard some bullshit equally ridiculous about, oh, well, we have this 1951 Convention on the Human Rights of Asylum Seekers and Non-Refoulement, and that originally meant that if there was a war in your neighboring country, maybe you would take a few people and return them, help them, you know, not get tortured and abused in this horrible war or something, and then you would return them. It would be limited numbers and, you know, that kind of stuff. They don't know about that and how like that transformed into the Dublin regulation, but then the Dublin regulation went out the window, and then even the pretense that the asylum seeker thing has got specific grounds, they just throw that out the window and they go, actually, it includes economic refuge as well and climate and all this. So basically the wheels are off and it's just an open, like they still use the justification of the word asylum seeker and they change it international protection applicant, and the words get more and more garbled as you go on and the meaning is totally lost. But it still has this air of the 1951 convention, some bullshit basically about that invokes the word asylum and refuge and international protection. Bollocks. But that's the idea, is that you're helping someone who's fleeing from something, right? This is the basic concept or something. If you had an alien who had landed on Earth and they didn't know about the strange UN theory that it's a bunch of soldier sleeper cells being brought in, they hadn't heard that. But they also hadn't heard this nonsense about a 1951 piece of paper that was written in Bretton Woods and